And we're back for another episode of Startup Hustle, a podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. If you want to start, own, or build a business, then you're in the right place. We bring you the real truth about what it's like to take something from concept to launch. From growth, innovation, experience, failing, or winning big, we've got you covered. So let's get down to business with another episode of Startup Hustle, brought to you by Fullscale.io. And we're back. Another episode of Startup Hustle. Matt DeCoursey here to have another conversation I'm hoping helps your business grow. Now, recently, you hopefully listened to our Demo Day episode where we featured many exciting companies that were a part of Kansas City's own LaunchKC, TechAssure, BCP Tech, that's powered by Brush Creek Partners Insurance Tech Division. And today with us, we have one of the 6 companies that participated in that. And, you know, there's so much stuff that goes on in the background of insurance, of all this different stuff. We've done a couple episodes in the past about it. Volumes and volumes of policies and data and users and trying to figure out actuary tables. And, oh man, where do we even start? And that was part of what LaunchKC worked with BCP Tech to do. And by the way, we'll give a shout out because Brush Creek Partners does provide our insurance at Full Scale and Startup Hustle. So they do a great job. Check them out. Now, with me today, I've got Alan Ringvald, and Alan is the CEO and founder of Relativity 6. And we talked a little bit about this during Demo Day. Hopefully you saw the presentation on the Startup Hustle Facebook page. Lots of cool stuff. We're talking AI, retention engines, and honestly, a whole lot of stuff that I'm hoping Alan explains to me how it works. Let's just dive right in. Alan, welcome to Startup Hustle.
How are you, sir? Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, busy. I'm glad to welcome you from Cambridge, Massachusetts. Being from Cambridge, does that raise your IQ like 15 points just from being in the area? Isn't that like Harvard?
No, not at all. But I'm glad.
It shows you how smart I am.
I'm glad you think so. And that's why our office is there to try to trick people. So appreciate you thinking that.
Hey, it worked. It worked. It really worked.
I'll take it.
So, and by the way, before we get too far into this, another shout out for BCP Tech. And today's episode is also brought to you by Fullscale.io. Now, let's just get started with your backstory. Now, we're going to talk about insurance AI startups today and your journey with doing that. But where did it start?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Matt. And unlike a lot of other people tackling the insurance space who have experience, either being an insurance broker, agent, actuary, that kind of thing, that's not me at all. We kind of took this from a technology perspective and learned about the industry over time. So a bit of a different approach, but just to give you some quick background about me, so you know who you're talking to. So basically, started the company in 2016, but actually unofficially in 2014, basically decided to go to MIT to business school. But actually, and that's the Cambridge part. But let me back it up a little bit. So. I came here as an immigrant to the U.S. We landed in Boston. My mom's from Israel. My dad's from Uruguay. I actually got naturalized when I was 12, so I was a resident alien, as they call it, which was interesting. So I kind of grew up watching them work super hard. They came here with nothing. They were really young, kind of had to figure it out themselves. I think that's where I got this idea of hustling, of startups, of kind of making things happen on your own. But kind of flashing forward to college, so I ended up going to Brandeis University. It's a school kind of the outskirts of Boston, Massachusetts. And my sophomore year, I started my first company. It was called College Bellhop. And the idea was, I was just noticing how students were, buying all kinds of stuff, using all kinds of services from providers around campus. But there was really no good portal or go-between between the students and the vendors that live there. And I realized that this setup is what happens at most schools across the country. So ended up creating like one of the first e-commerce portals that connected students and all those vendors, food delivery, dry cleaning, that kind of a thing. So I actually started that sophomore year in college. It got pretty successful to the point where it ended up paying for school. So didn't have to end up paying for school. Did it a year after school as well, and then sold it to the biggest provider of this kind of a thing, a company out of Houston, Texas. And then from there went off to Google. So I spent about 4.5 years in San Francisco working at Google, working at all different kinds of divisions. So I started in 2006, kind of early days. But it was really cool because, I came in early. It was still pretty chaotic there. Got to work, in all different divisions, YouTube, AdWords, mobile, all kinds of stuff, all kinds of different functions. But ultimately, Matt, it was just so huge. Like literally I could go on vacation and nobody would care or nobody would know that I'd left. And like while the money was good and, I was learning, ultimately it was pretty soul sucking. So, it was something that I knew I couldn't do longer than 5 years. But luckily, as I was kind of feeling down a little bit, I got a call from this guy back in Boston, who I'd known for years. And he told me that he wanted to start a candy company. So his idea was, I know I'm looking at your confused face right now, Matt, but it'll make sense.
Well, you said candy, which got one eye perked up, and then the other eye was confused because maybe AI candy. I don't know.
Right. Well, it's not. But the idea was basically high level. Kids are eating the worst for you type foods. Corn syrup's poison, basically. Could we make a candy bar that tasted as good as Snickers, Reese's, M&M's, Twix, but way better ingredients, more sustainable ingredients as well. Same price point and same place. So not Whole Foods, but Walmart is like where we wanted distribution.
So you went from Google and doing high tech stuff. Was Bellhop, was that I mean, was that an exit? Like, did you have an exit at like in your early 20s?
Yeah, and that's when I thought it was all so easy and like I should keep doing it.
Yeah, you usually do at that time. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, it's funny you mentioned that because a lot of when you're younger, and for you younger entrepreneurs out there, startups and entrepreneurship will humble you at some point. And one of the reasons that we always encourage people to own your failure is because people that want to get involved with you, they don't want you to be the one that they get the first failure with.
That's right.
Because you feel bulletproof, and like you mentioned, like you're saying, hey, this seems pretty easy. I find it to be interesting. You went from Google to come back all the way back to Mass, and then and now you're going to make candy.
Yeah, I know. My parents were extremely disappointed, but coming from no stability, they were so thrilled that I found a job at Google and really just wanted me to be there my whole life. But it wasn't for me. The candy thing was cool though, because it was basically a big challenge. Like, could we take on like Hershey's and Mars, like big companies, like private 100-year-old mainstays? Could we actually be a challenger brand there? And that got me excited. And the other parts that were exciting are the main founder of this company was very successful. He committed a lot of money to it. We'd raised a lot of money. We even got celebrities. So celebrity endorsements was a big part of our strategy. Literally name like an A-list celebrity and they were a part of our company. It was absolutely ridiculous. It kind of got out of control there. Tom Brady, Matt Damon, Giselle, John Legend, list goes on and on.
Never heard of any of them. Who are all those people?
Right. Just to name drop early on in the podcast. But it was really interesting because that strategy honestly didn't work very well at all, which was quite humbling. Like to your humbling point, this company had every resource in the world, but we had a pretty difficult time not selling into the big box retailer, but actually selling to the consumer. What we realized is the real battle, the real competition is once you get in store, not getting to the store. So it was a lot harder than we thought, even with money and resources and people. So it was interesting. I did that for 2 years. In that time, a lot of professional athletes invested in Unreal. So I was a bit younger then. made friends with a good amount of them. Actually, so 2 years into the company, I got transitioned out, AKA fired. We'd spent a lot of money. We hadn't gotten the success that we were looking for, and they were kind of looking to replace a lot of the management team. So as I left, one of the NFL players, Patriots players, approached me, and he said, "Hey, I have this contract from Puma. I don't think the number is very high. Do you mind calling them and seeing if you could do better?" And I was like, "Don't you have an agent?" And he was like, "Yeah, but my agent's not, I'm not top of mind right now." So called Puma, asked pretty bluntly, "Hey, could you do better than this? Like maybe 5 times better?" And Puma was like, "Yeah, sure." So then I brought that back to the player, and he was just like shocked and thrilled. And he was like, "Okay, we have to do something together." And the insight that came out of that was really interesting was that this player, while not a starter, is still very well known by about 10 million fans of the Patriots. So why not see if we can go direct to the fan as opposed to going through an intermediary like a brand or anything like that. So this is 2012, 2013. You see this today all the time. But at the time, it was really cool and interesting because what we would do is every time that player had a good play on the field, we'd make a T-shirt, we'd put it up on his social and sell thousands of those T-shirts at a $30 price point. And that was an interesting business. And we actually scaled that pretty decently as we went along. Got it to the NBA, got it to professional soccer, that kind of thing. So that was a kind of an interesting random experience. And I did that for 2 years. The lesson with that one, I started with my best friend. So I think you know where this story goes. My ex-best friend. Because
by the way, that's usually the way that goes. I feel like I need to interject here because I had a whole section in my book, $1 Million Bedroom, about this. And so my wife was able to work with me in the first business we started for like 6 or 7 years. And that is so uncommon. I have just had if you value your relationship with your friends and your family, be very careful doing business with them.
Totally.
Because they likely aren't going to share the passion that you have. They feel responsible for potentially participating or being involved, and it often leads to disappointment. And, friends, family, stuff like that. And, we were unique. Jill and I worked very well together. But so many people literally 9 out of 10 people I talk to have failed with spousal, familial, and just basic friend relationships. So kind of like you said, it's often like the ex-best friend.
Yeah.
So
it's weird. I've never been married, but it really felt like what a divorce probably feels like when we were splitting up. Like there are assets we have to talk about. And, it was very emotional. Definitely a learning experience and something that I tried not to do in the future. But anyways, so we went through that experience.
One thing here, and this is interesting because at this point you can't even be 30 years old yet, right? In that ballpark.
Yeah, just about 30.
And you're in that ballpark, and so you have a successful exit, working for years at Google, working for a candy company, and then you've done quite a bit of stuff at an early age, and you're definitely, like we always talk about the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. That's a yo-yo in some regards through a lot of different industries and a lot of different stuff. Let me just ask one question, and we haven't even gotten to your current business yet, but that's okay. Cause this is an interesting story, man. And we were determined to talk about insurance AI startups. Now, look, that might only be like 12 minutes of material. So that on some levels, but the success and we're trying to tell the real story of entrepreneurship. So what I wanted to ask is okay, so friends, ex-friends, candy, Google, and exit, all of that. What are just what's the biggest takeaway that you, looking back at that point, what are you thinking? Like, cause I don't know if you've made any money, maybe you had it, you lost it, a bunch of different stuff. Like at that point, what did you truly feel like, okay, I'm either really confused and I don't know where I'm going, or I feel like I'm winning. Like, where were you at mentally with that? Cause I think it's some interesting insight.
Yeah, I mean, just like reflecting back, I mean, it's really interesting you say that. But what I realized is that, I don't know how to say this, but I was kind of riding the wave, like the opportunities as they would come. I just had that philosophy of, keep my mind open. Don't think of myself as having like one specific career or trajectory. Just
Sure.
let the world talk to me and take hints, and then go try stuff, and good things will happen. You're right. There are ups and downs. At this point, with Super Digital, which was the company with my best friend, it was kind of honestly a low point. I really didn't know what to do next. This was kind of the big.
I mean, was that just a fail? Did that just not work out?
No, it's still going on. It's actually very successful.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. So founder disagreement or something.
Disagreement. Right. Yeah. Founder.
I went through that myself, man. Like, one of my good friends was my original business partner in the $1 Million Bedroom story, and ended up having to buy the guy out. He didn't want to do any work. And I valued what he had done, but I knew that I wasn't going to be able to maintain that for 10 years or whatever. And I'm really glad. It was the best stock purchase I ever made, because that same business, it turned into everything else. It turned into Gigabook. It turned into Full Scale, turned into Startup Hustle. It turned into so much of that stuff. And if I was dragging around, like someone that wasn't really wanting to, I'm passionate. Like I go all in when I do stuff. And here's the thing is, that's a plus and a minus, because it makes me really intense to work with. Like, some people can't keep up, and it also has high expectations. So if you're one of those people and you're going to really be bothered by feeling like your co-founders or your business partners aren't doing what you're doing. And that's where the friends and family thing often kind of goes south. Is that similar to what happened? Or?
It is. This is my friend since I was 3 years old,
Ouch.
Yeah. So like a brother, but it was just too much. We had different opinions about how to grow. I think the fact that it was successful was also an issue, because if it's failing, then you're both kind of in it. But when it's successful, you start getting a little bit greedy and looking around and like seeing who does what. It's just, it got weird once we started making money, to be honest with you.
The other Matt Watson has talked about that a lot, because he sold his first company, Vin Solutions, for $150 million in 2012 when he was 29, and he literally points that out a lot. He says, as once people started realizing what a lot of this was worth, like, it really changed everyone's perception. Like, shit, this is worth $100 million, and I own 20% of it. I'd rather have $20 million right now than show up to work every day.
Exactly.
And then someone else wants to grow it, and there's all these different things. And like, really, in the end, and that's why it's so important to have, good fences make good neighbors, and any agreement you should have with, gosh, man, like, and I'm sure you've run into, hey man, well, how should I split up equity? What should I be giving my co-founder? Like, I don't know what you should be giving. That's different every time. But what you should do is make sure that these vesting agreements cover rainy and sunny days, not just good and not just bad. And like, I've seen, oh dude, you've been around it. People they give away 30% of their equity and there's no out, and it's just there. And it's an albatross for future funding, for any of it. And it's terrible. Now, and I want to continue with the story. One thing I want to point out to everyone listening, the location of the setting so far is two of the most competitive places maybe on the planet. You're in Cambridge and Silicon Valley. Like, I don't know if there's high. I mean, I just assume in both of those places that the majority of people, here's the thing. You're in Cambridge for a reason. It's the schools, it's different stuff like that. You're in the Valley for different reasons. I was like, uber competitive. Like, did you have just a completely different, I'm in Kansas City, man. We're the 25th biggest media market in the country. Like, we're good old boys down here on some days. Yeah. What?
You guys are great.
What?
Stop it. You're great.
Well, no, but I mean, the thing is there, well, I'm super competitive, man. Like I hate losing, but that's not always the nature here. But I gotta think in both of those places, like there's a lot of like, I don't know how to describe it. Maybe you could.
No, I mean, it's that, you're, like you said, you're in the most competitive environment, but kind of like in terms of reflecting back, it's just another thing I love is just getting action, like go where the action is. The actions in both places.
I've said that myself, man. I've said that myself like that. I mean, and one of the things too is I want to commend you because like I think we're cut from the same cloth. Like we've referred to it as entrepreneurial ADD. And and be careful with it, people, because there's so many things that I chased, and I say there's a lot of ships left in my harbor, and ships are best meant to be at sea. So a lot of unsailed vessels, a lot of money left on the table, a lot of I don't know, dude, a lot of stuff, and that's part of doing it. I mean, I am very open about saying that I try 10 things hoping that one of them works.
Totally.
But when you find that wave or that horse or whatever that rides, like you ride it and you ride it and you ride it. I just always like to have some backup myself because, dude, you don't know when things are going to change. I mean, I've always had multiple things going, and I can look back and think about the times that business X saved business Y, that saved business Z, and Z saved W, and like different stuff. Now you are going to water down your own effort and bandwidth with some of that, and that's a challenge.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we're going to have to talk about.
Let's get into it. We're there.
So, and we're okay. So for all of you listening, thanks for hanging out. We are now going to talk about AI and stuff like that. But honestly, man, I think it's a cool story. Like, I think that it's important to understand that the path to where people end up at whatever they're doing isn't always linear. Like, dude, you had an exit early. You worked for Google. You made candy, like whatever. I mean, it's like where there's opportunity, chase it. So in regards to what you do now,
yep.
And once again, go to relativity6.com. I do want to point out again that Relativity 6 is part of the BCP Tech program, a division of LaunchKC. Really cool program we have here in Kansas City that reaches out nationally to try to pair top-level investor partner companies with companies like Relativity 6. Let me ask real quick before we get into this, how did you find out about LaunchKC?
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about the Midwest for a long time. Been coming to Des Moines, have things going in Chicago. Like we've seen a lot in financial services. You guys are certainly a hub, especially as it comes to insurance. It's something that, like, once I really got in the space, I realized how ingrained KC is with banks, insurance companies, that kind of a thing. So I just wanted to get involved however I could.
It's interesting too, because it's not just like, it's all types of insurance. Like we have a couple like pet insurance companies that are big, and yeah, dude, like we've had them on the show, Companion Protect, and like fast growing company and like trying to keep up. We have some other kind of like Lockton's here and some other pretty big insurance companies. And, it's kind of interesting because different parts of the country trend towards stuff. We have a lot of ag tech and transportation, agriculture, well, because we're in the middle of Kansas, and then transportation is just inherent because we're in the middle of the country. So it kind of makes sense as a hub. But yeah, so that kind of, like now when I think of Cambridge, Mass, and I think of San Francisco, honestly, I think of cutting edge stuff. Like those areas, those regions are always the leaders in things like AI, machine learning. I haven't been to New England in a bit. I was out in the Valley a year ago. And, I was talking to a lot of people. I just went out to TechCrunch to hang out. Visited some of our, actually visited some LaunchKC participants that were from the Valley and saw about their business. We recorded some podcasts, did a couple different things. But I mean, really what I realized is some of these places really are, and like look, when you're from Kansas or the Midwest, you don't want to hear about how you're not on the cutting edge of whatever. But I mean, they're doing some really cool stuff with emerging tech and whatever that is in these places. So absolutely, I think that could play to your advantage. Now, okay, so you were thinking about the Midwest, but where did you run into LaunchKC?
Yeah, I mean, again, just in working with like GIA and like a lot of different programs out there, I just got recommended from so many, like almost everyone I talked to said you gotta look into LaunchKC, you gotta look into LaunchKC. So definitely
That's good.
highly regarded.
So are you familiar with how they pivoted that program? Because I think it's so awesome.
No, I'm not.
So LaunchKC has been around for a while, and they were giving away $50,000 grants, but they'd only get budgets for like anywhere from 12 to maybe 20. Which, look, 50K is 50K. But that said, would you rather have a 50K investment from a top level partner that can move the needle for you? So what they figured out was that they could do a better service for startups, Kansas City, and all of it if they found top level partners. And that's where BCP, Brush Creek Partners, which inherently is an insurance providing company. Like I buy my business insurance from Brush Creek, and Travis Holt's the founder of that. They do a great job. Steve and Alex did a great job of running the program, but they align a company like that wants to actually make an investment of some size. But I love that because they have a vested interest in your success.
100%.
It's not just like, hey, here's a grant. Good luck.
No.
Like you can get the best of both worlds. That's great. So it's interesting to hear that people have heard about that outside of KC. I like that.
Yeah,
by the way, most of the companies in the LaunchKC program are actually not from here, which it ruffles a couple feathers here and there, and then we get over it. So
I can see that. I can see that. But
all right.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, because some of the clips from today's show you may have already heard in a different episode, how was you? And we are still going to talk about your startup, but but overall, like, what did you want to accomplish in the program? And then then let's just talk about what you guys are accomplishing.
Yeah. So we decided, and we'll get into this, but we decided from all the different verticals and use cases we have that our product was best fit for the insurance brokerage space. So just wanted to align with obviously BCP is a great model there, and just wanted to learn as much as possible about this market, about these types of users as possible. And BCP did a great job of getting me in front of a lot of different agencies so I could actually show my product, get real feedback, and actually get like real contracts and relationships started. So honestly, I've done probably more accelerators than I'd like to admit, to be honest with you, Matt. But this has been, not to offend the other ones out there that are great, but this has been the most impactful for me by far. So
and I love I have a love-hate with accelerators, dude. I've never done one.
Yeah.
So maybe I don't get it, but I'm involved with a lot of them. We've been involved with LaunchKC for a year, and we've done some other stuff. But one of the things that I've always said is, every business has a different set of problems and requires a different set of solutions. So some of these things try to like bundle it up in a box, and like it makes some weird assumptions like, okay, everyone's at the same stage, needs the same stuff, needs the same programming. And like that's one of the objections I have with some accelerators. But that said, I think for so many people, it's that instant validation. Now, for those of you listening, come join us in the Startup Hustle chat on Facebook. And we do some interesting polls there. And I put one up recently that said, basically was like, my business would do better if I had more. And it was like capital, connections, like a whole bunch of stuff. Connections and introductions ran away with that poll. Like, and I was honestly surprised because I just thought I don't know. Some people are like, oh, give me the money, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But I mean, it really was. It got more than half of the votes for about 6 or 7 answers. So,
wow.
I mean, you're on your 5th startup or 4th or 5th startup. I mean, looking back at it, what's more important? What would you vote for?
Yeah, same. Connection. Honestly, it doesn't make sense to start something until you've talked to enough actual customers and get a sense for what they're actually looking for. And honestly, if you take money too early, you're just wasting your own time, right? Because you might not be going down the right path. So all day, I'll take intros to actual potential buyers.
So with the way that LaunchKC did this stuff, go to launchkc.org if you want to check it out. They do different cohorts or verticals. So everyone in your class, word cohort was nothing I've ever used.
It's a weird word, right?
Recently. Yeah, I know. I'm like, it's in your your class, your group or something, but you were in there. It was all insurance tech, and go back and check out Demo Day. Go to the Startup Hustle Facebook page and check out the video that we did with these guys, because we did the best we could during quarantine. It was a little more difficult, but I mean, did you enjoy, was it really attractive to know that you were going to be partnered with someone that had a vested interest in you, like in your direct industry? I mean, was that like a huge motivating factor?
Yeah, 100%. Alignment is big, right? We need that engagement. It's hard enough to start something. So you need as many partners as you can get, and ones that are actually vested in your success are always better from my experience. So yeah, that was a big part of it.
Okay, so 30 minutes in, what's the problem that Relativity 6 solves?
Let's get into it, Matt. Actually,
we had to set it up. We had to set it up, man. Like, I mean, for those of you listening, I mean, how could you learn about any of this if we didn't set the table and the plate? So.
Absolutely, and I'm gonna do another 2 minutes of table setting to make it make sense. If that's okay.
It's all good. We've set a standard in this episode, and we need to remain true to the brand standard of this episode. Which, by the way, I've officially changed the name of to Ups, Downs, Wins, and Losses.
Okay.
So, and that's okay, dude. That's what that's what we love about the show, is like we want it to be unscripted, because we, and I think you can validate. I kind of set up before the episode. I'm like, hey man, this is conversational. We're going to talk about stuff. We might get off track. I don't know. Let's just talk about interesting things and try to help people not make the same mistakes we've made.
Totally.
All right.
Here we go.
Set it up.
So I'm going to set the stage. So I had just been, I just had my huge fight with my ex-best friend. We have this successful kind of sports marketing company that we built, settled there. I had nothing going on, honestly. I was out of the company that I'd started with my best friend. And I didn't know what to do next. And luckily, I got a call from MIT. So MIT is interesting. So I grew up in Boston, drove by it my whole life. Never for 1 minute did I think I'd actually get in there and actually know anybody who'd been. And growing up, I'd actually never known anybody who'd gone there. So, the classic "so close yet so far away" thing. But I did make a good connection, and long story short, I started working there as an entrepreneur in residence within their entrepreneurship center. So basically, I was basically advising students from all across campus in everything related to venture building, venture formation, everything related to that. Honestly, the best 7-8 months of my life. It was insane, the type of technology that, the types of students in tech that walked into the office every single day. Completely inspiring. So inspiring that, I decided to apply to the business school, never thinking I would get in. But I did. And through that process, I'd obviously made friends with a lot of professors, a lot of students. Ended up collaborating with one of my classmates and a professor of ours, all around the idea that AI, machine learning, probably the most transformational technology of our generation, yet only 2 or 3% of companies actually use it. Because it turns out
this was about 4 years ago, right?
Yeah, exactly. 4 or 5 years.
I mean, dude, for the life cycle of major use of machine learning and AI, 4 years ago was an eternity.
Exactly.
I mean, literally, like you mentioned, so few people using it. Now, I mentioned being out in San Francisco last year. When we left, after the first day of TechCrunch, we were joking because we put my machine learning algorithm does in front of every sentence that we said the rest of that night. My machine learning algorithm will choose how much ketchup I need to put on this plate right now. Because, dude, everybody we talked to was they said those exact words. It sounded like a parrot.
I know.
Was saying those. Yeah. Now that said, there's so many different levels of it. I got to assume you're getting into some high level stuff at MIT though.
Yeah, we did, but I'll tell you honestly, I do feel very shamed and dirty to even say the words AI machine learning based on how buzzwordy it's become. But like 4 or 5 years ago, it was still relatively new, still very interesting. But like what we realize is there's actually three key issues with people using AI and machine learning the right way and operationalizing it. Long story short, there's a lot of issues with data and data understanding, a lot of issues with infrastructure. So a lot of the data is siloed when you really do need to have the data kind of talk to each other and then create a real feedback loop to get better. And the third really ignored area is the actual user experience. So the how do the predictions actually show up to a person who's non-technical who needs to use the stuff? So those were kind of like the three core issues we realized. And throughout school, definitely did more of this than classwork, but really focused on understanding the problem and creating a solution so that you could take raw data and turn it into like a real prediction that was actually accurate and useful and delivered in a way that wasn't crazy and complicated. So that was the pursuit that we had.
Those are all good points, like especially the third one when you talk about the user experience, because like 4 years ago, any AI platform, so data visualization. Right, and that's what Alan's talking about here, because like you're talking about, all right, so machine learning I mean, a lot of people use Python, but then there's like other languages, R, and just different things that aren't common, different kinds of servers, different kinds of input, different kinds of output. And keep in mind, when you're building custom software, it doesn't just come with a dashboard. Like, so, you get like, how are you going to look at this data? And data science and machine learning have these massive data sets sometimes. So you're like, oh, wow. Like, hey, here's a spreadsheet with 80,000 lines in it. Figure it out. I
Exactly.
mean, and that's that. So the problem so many people had with machine learning and AI stuff is like some of it would do the actual first couple things you talked about, and then how do I do anything? How do I make this actionable?
Exactly. So we were dead set focused on that. Right after graduation, got lucky, got our first big customer, and it was an aircraft manufacturer who also happened to have a private jet division. So we got hired on by that private jet division to help their salespeople prioritize who they should be speaking with next. Very interesting problem set. But it was kind of like an edge case, but we took it on. It was really interesting. Good first use of our tech. Um, as that happened, my girlfriend of 5 years died in her sleep, almost like right after we signed that contract. Yeah. So,
Wow.
like right after we graduated from school, we signed this big deal. Literally, like 3 days later, I find her passed away in our bed.
Wow.
Yeah, so that happened like right when the company was kind of getting started. It was pretty crazy, but like had to keep going. We had already fundraised a little bit for this, had some traction, and honestly, it was a great distraction. So I kind of poured myself into the job. But so just in terms of ups and downs, like that was certainly a pretty brutal one, obviously. So that happened about like 4 years ago, almost. But
I'm sorry you had to go through that.
yeah,
And the thing that's tough, and so many people experience some of that feeling with COVID, is like, yeah, I mean, Murphy's Law, the worst thing's going to happen at the worst time, or like when you don't expect it. And I mean, so many people were bullish on so many things earlier this year, and COVID hits and just like throws a complete like. And and here's the thing: is it's easy to want to be weighted down and to get sunk by that stuff. So I commend you for getting through a tough time. And sometimes you said it's like psychologists probably wouldn't say it's healthy to just always bury yourself in your work, but in some of those cases, it's a welcome distraction, because if you're just sitting around thinking about it, it can be tough. And
yeah,
I mean, did you were you and once again, sorry for your loss there, but I mean, was there something that motivated you or helped you get through any of the tough times? And that might go back to any of the other businesses you have as well.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm still trying to figure that out, but I just kind of, I don't want to say ignored it. I definitely was feeling the pain, but I got a lot of reprieve from all the meetings that we got, all the interest that we were getting. I was traveling basically all around the world selling this platform and trying to find the right vertical for it, the right user. Got a lot of contracts going. So I would say it just was really helpful to have that distraction of the work. And this was a company that, based on my experience, I knew had a lot more interest and traction than other companies. So I knew I had to, I had a duty to keep pursuing it. So I did, and I'm really glad I did, because a lot of people were telling me that I should quit, take some time off, that kind of thing. But again, like throwing myself into the challenge, I think couldn't have been more helpful at the time. So
Okay.
yeah.
So now you guys are doing some cutting edge stuff. You're gaining traction. That's always exciting. I'm willing to bet that. Okay, here's the thing: is based on the region you're in, the fact that you probably had a difficult time finding anybody that knew anything about this tech. Probably ran into some, like you said, raising some money or some capital problems. Like what I got to feel like coming out of MIT and having a background as a successful founder, we have pulled so many investors and just people in general. Who do you bet on, the jockey or the horse? Like
Right.
You're a jockey bet. Like you've found multiple success and even had failure, which, like I said, is not a deterrent from someone putting money into you. Like, I mean, when it came to raising capital and all that different stuff, like, were you guys more centric at that point on raising money or building revenue?
Yeah, revenue always to start.
Best form of capital.
It is. Right? Like, there's a whole nother conversation to be had about institutional money and everything that comes with that. I had that experience before, so always top of mind for me was freedom and the ability to stay creative and not get on that VC clock too early, right? Because the second you take that institutional money, it's like you got to get to the next round and the next round and the next round. But in our case, I really knew that AI machine learning was still so nascent, and I knew that we didn't have the endpoint solution that we were looking for ultimately. So I wanted to stay flexible. We got some early money in, which was great, and we did take angel money. So angel money was really helpful to us in our early days because these are supportive people, right? They have a stake in the game, but you're not sitting on your board telling you what to do. And I think that was instrumental because we went from aircraft manufacturers to retail to ultimately 3 years ago we found the insurance space, and that's where we are today. But I'd say if we took the classic seed round like VC money day one, I don't think I'd be sitting here talking to you today. I think I would have been done already, because ultimately we realized.
In what regard?
Yeah, because we probably would have gone down the wrong path, because we would have had to use the money we got and like bet early that we knew what we were talking about and we knew exactly where we needed to go. And the reality is we didn't know where we needed to go till 6 months ago. And we've been around for 4.5 years. So, I certainly believe that this company would have been out of business if we took any kind of early large checks. So we built this thing on 50K, 100K checks for the most part. Hang
on, let me check my math. 10 of those 100K checks is still $1 million.
Yeah.
It's a little more work to get to that, but hey. Yeah. I've talked to a lot of people that would prefer to have 10 different $100,000 investors than $1 million one. Cause if you pick the right people, you got 10 people that are interested in you succeeding.
Exactly.
Yeah. You also have 10 people that you could potentially have be a giant pain in your ass, but that's always to be determined until after the story's progressed a little bit.
Exactly.
Question, because raising money is such a hot topic here. What's something you've learned when it came to being successful and something you've learned to not do to be successful?
In terms of raising money?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
like if you're like anything, like it could be anything. I don't know, dude. Like if you had to give one tip, one do and one don't for raising money for the listeners, and this will be good. Like, I mean, what do you got?
Traction. You got to come in with some traction. You got to come in with like real stuff. If you come in with a deck and a good idea and a couple free pilots, you're wasting everyone's time, including yourself. I'd say you're wasting your time more than anyone's, because that money comes with a lot of strings, and you're going to be committed to going down like a certain path, like assuming you can even get through that conversation and get the money, which is, I think it's a fallacy, right? Like the percentage of people that actually get institutional money is so low that, in my opinion, especially in the early days, that's time better spent going and getting customers and seeing if you actually have something people are willing to pay for. And if they're not, do something else. Because again, like I said, the worst thing you could do is raise a lot of money, not validating something, and then literally like wasting years of your life pursuing something that wasn't really going to happen anyways. So I'd say like, yeah, just come in with some real firepower, or you're kind of wasting everyone's time in that room.
What about a don't? I mean, that is kind of a don't.
Yeah, that's kind of the
like a do and a don't. Like you're accomplishing a couple different things there. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that's been a common answer when asked, as far as like, I think come prepared, have reasonable expectations, like, I mean, and you're right. Like if you have something that has traction or any level of adoption, your possibility of getting money, like an MVP versus like, hey, I got a great idea and here's my pitch deck. Those are two completely different value propositions. Investors inherently don't like to pay for development. They want to come in at a point where it's like, hey, I take my blowtorch, light this fuse. And by the way, this blowtorch is spitting out hundreds, and like, I mean, that's the dream for most investors. They don't want to hear about how you need 90% of your money for product development. You haven't proven out your cost of acquisition, blah, 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 blah. So like, and with what you do right now, like, I'm sure that was somewhat difficult because you're selling enterprise level products, and insurance companies they're usually pretty big.
Yeah, exactly. Not only are they big, they've staffed up their data science teams like crazy, right? So, I'm walking into environments where, there's hundreds of data scientists in the next building over. So, in the early days, it was difficult to really sell this like endpoint product of this like data science platform. So it certainly ran into issues, when I did want to get feedback from those VCs. And honestly, they were right. Like it was too early. We still needed time to understand what it is that we were actually doing and focusing on. So yeah, I mean, only now, literally like 4.5 years later, do I feel like institutional money makes sense for what it is that I'm doing. But most companies don't even last 4.5 years. So
True. I mean, you got a 90% chance of being out of business within 2 years. I mean, it depends on what you're doing. I mean, the one thing, and keep in mind for those of you that are startup hopefuls or have entrepreneur dreams, when you start a startup, it doesn't come with an owner's manual. So that's why franchises, and you they taught you this at a 100 level business course at MIT Business School. Franchises are successful because they come with an owner's manual. Like, I mean, literally like 95, 97%, because it's proven. And you get built-in business. Like if you open a Subway or a McDonald's, like people are going to be there the first day you open. You're going to have a stream of revenue. It's a proven model. And there's an 800 number on the back of an operating manual that you can call if you can't find the answer in the book. And that's what I think so many people underestimate will be required to have a successful startup. And, maybe that's where we can begin to wrap up, like what part of your planning and overall, like you have anytime you're analyzing data and doing all this kind of stuff, like there's a lot of deep options there. It can go a lot of different ways. Like what, from your original plan, what percentage of that to date has been like, oh yeah, we were right 38%. What so much of the plan always changes is why I say that. But from a planning perspective, documenting and preparing, like how was that a ton of work with your current company?
Ton of work. We were so I'll do this last part quick, but we ended up really focusing on the large enterprise for the last 2, 3 years. So, engaging with companies all over the world, basically revamping their data science infrastructure, like doing the whole thing over again. That took a lot of documentation. It took, a lot of experience, a lot of time, that kind of thing. And then, so we'd worked with carriers, wholesalers, and brokers, kind of the three big areas within insurance, and got deep in with all three. But realized that our technology, which essentially what it comes down to, I think I'm answering your question 20 minutes later. Sorry about that, Matt. But what it is that Relativity 6 does. That was hilarious.
No, not relativity sucks. That's not good. I feel like you did that to yourself. You have joked about your own name, and that was like one of those like Freudian slips or whatever. Yeah.
The name is so hard, like I can't even spell it sometimes. So like that's maybe a regret, but anyway.
It's okay. We've had people accidentally say startup hassle, and I'm like, no, that's still accurate.
Yeah.
That is still on. So
yeah, it's hilarious. But no, so here's what it is we do. So we've done all this data science, but ultimately what we focus on is cross-sell. So we feel like we're the best in the world at understanding the relationships between customers and the policies that they purchase over time. So we've mapped over 150 million customers and their behaviors, purchasing patterns, everything like that. And our goal really is to help companies grow organically, right? Instead of spending 5 times more to acquire new business, let's focus on your current customers and understand what else they might need at a certain time. So that we feel is our core competency, and we use machine learning to do that very well. And we've realized that insurance brokers care a lot about this problem. It's something that hasn't been solved yet. It's not something that companies necessarily focus on, but we feel like getting that right and being that layer for every insurance broker is something that we aspire to do, and we feel like if we can do that, good things will happen. So that's really where we are.
I'm going to dumb this down a little bit for myself and everyone else. And you talk about that mapping of stuff to stuff. So we mentioned at the very top of the episode talking about, like these massive amounts of data, these policies, all this different stuff, these different offerings. So now you're an insurance, and tell me if I get this right. Now you're an insurance agent and you're talking to me and you want to sell me something, and you might not even know that something exists, much less that it's a good recommendation to give me out of a 1,500 line offering. Now, look, math, just hashtag math here. If you have 100 things that could map to 100 other things, you've got a lot of possibilities. And when you start talking about thousands, 10,000s, 15,000s, the ability for us as humans to accurately and unbiasedly map that kind of stuff is not realistic. And these are the kind of things that companies like yours are like, this is a great solution because it's helping people find the products. It's helping the business sell the client what they need and justifying why to do it. And then here's the thing, man, if you're that's what I enjoyed about Brush Creek Partners, is they really helped us tailor make our insurance policy to the specific needs of our business. And I deal with other insurance companies. We handle their IP. We have employees in multiple countries and all that stuff. And like some of that, like they were like, hey, you don't need this, but you might want more of this. And I mean, that's the thing, is like, you want to have some faith in whoever's recommending these products, especially things that protect your family or your business. And I mean, is that correct?
You nailed it. And the one distinction is it's not like we'll ever replace the Brush Creek advisors, the ones that you talk to, right?
No.
But we can at least give them the options that are available that we make the most sense.
Yeah, and that was the whole point. And, like, here's the thing. The people at that office, they want the input too. Because think about how daunting that feels, especially if you haven't been doing it for 20 years. And that all the people we've talked to about insurance tech, and so much of that is like, dude, these policies are massive and there's so many of them. Then apparently what happens is they get iterated across all these different offices. Like, technically one red line of one thing in one contract now means you have 2 policies, not one. And it gets crazy. And that's what we talked about in a prior episode about that. And, my friend Chris, who is in a similar space, is talking about, hey, the insurance companies don't even know what's in their own policies sometimes. And that's a problem for them and for the buyer. So, well, all right. So we end I've enjoyed this episode, by the way, because we did it backwards. And I might have needed that on many levels. So thank you for providing variety on that. But I really think, well, dude, this is a great story. And much like entrepreneurship or startups, sometimes you begin the story and the journey and you think you're going one direction. You're like, you know what? I kind of like this one too. So now we end episodes of Startup Hustle with what we call the Founders Freestyle. And you've got so much perspective, but I'm gonna try to hold you into one lane here.
Okay.
With all the different things you've done and all the different things you've experienced, what is the best advice you can give an entrepreneur / founder?
Yeah, I'd say don't think about it too much because you're not that smart. Nobody is. Just go do it. Go do it. Go make mistakes. Iterate from there. Just be brave and try. Expose your stuff. I hate the term stealth startup. It doesn't exist to me. You have to socialize what you do and beat it up until you get somewhere. Nothing starts in your head. You really have to put it into the real world.
Yeah, I'm going to parlay off that, man, because I think, a quote myself from my book, Balance Me, like sometimes you just have to jump and build wings, and there is nothing that will make you. Now, look, you should make sure you have the stuff for the wings before you jump. That is an important component of not hitting the canyon floor. That said, if you have what you need, nothing will make you build the wings faster than the impending doom of the canyon floor. There's no such thing as the right time, people. Like, that is a myth. I've talked about that a lot. It doesn't exist. If you find yourself saying it's not the right time, sure, there are some times that are better than others. But really, if you find yourself saying it's not the right time, 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 you really need to sit back and think, like, am I making an excuse about why I'm not trying to do it? It's scary. Like, can we agree? Is entrepreneurship scary?
It's terrifying. I wake up every day horrified and terrified.
Dude, I say that to our clients, like, because we built Full Scale to be for founders by founders. I said that literally in a call right before I got on this podcast. I said, guys, I know where you're at. I know what it's like to wake up at 3 a.m. and wonder if you're going broke, if you're crazy, or if every single decision you have made was wrong. I've been there. I get it. And guess what? I'll probably sign up and do it again. So, I mean, overall, man, I really appreciate the input here. Congratulations again on joining us for one of my, if not for my favorite entrepreneur and startup program. Kudos to LaunchKC, to BCP Tech. Once again, go down to the show notes and go back and watch our video presentation. That's right. You can confirm that we have faces made for radio. And also, if you want to come chat with us, join the Startup Hustle chat community. We started it 2 years ago and recently decided to actually try. Got a 4-digit number of people in there, but I'd love to see y'all come join us, join our hosts, join our guests occasionally, and join each other to talk about some of the stuff we've learned that you like, that you don't like. If you want to say something mean to me, I might even read it out loud on the show. I'll see you next time, Alan.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.